Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Mayor and I, episode 40-something.
41.
41.
Oh, no,
I think
42.
we might be 42 now.
42.
This is a weekly, it's called The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan and Nick Buckley, a weekly look at current news events, discussions, things that are irritating me intensely, and Nick tries to calm me down. If you enjoy this program, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, put comments on, and recommend us to your friends.
Yeah.
Please. Nick, you're getting very popular now, 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and how many are you up to on Twitter
now? Over 40,000 now.
Wow, great, including Boy George.
Including Boy George.
Has he still on there, or has he left in disgust?
No, he's still on there, and also including.
What, somebody else joined? Do you not?
No, but someone from a couple of years ago, Douglas Murray.
Douglas Murray follows you?
Yes, he does.
Really?
Yes.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, Boy George is impressive, but Douglas Murray is slightly more impressive, I think. Congratulations. If I can shake the hand of such a famous person, that would
I'm just waiting for Jordan Peterson now to fall in line.
He's gone in a different direction. So I'm going to start with England, Nick. And a survey just done shows that this is a British social attitude survey. You may have heard about it.
Yeah.
64% of the British public in 2024 are proud of Britain's history, and that compares to 86% in 2013. So we've gone from a position where nearly 100% of the population were proud of Britain and its history of Winston Churchill and all that jazz, now to 64%. We're hovering, getting close to less than half, to half or less than half being proud of Britain's history. And what does that really tell us, do you think, about... I mean, I think I know what it tells us, but I'd be interested in your interpretation of what it is.
I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody. We've spent the last decade and several decades, but definitely this last decade, bombarding the people in the UK that this country is horrendous. This country is evil. This country invented slavery. This country kills black people. This country is anti-Muslim. We invaded the world and killed people and raped people and stole everything. We treat the working class really poorly. All the men here are rapists. All the women here are prostitutes. And we've been doing this for decades, but it's all speeded up this last 10 years. So this is no surprise. And in the last 10 years, we now have social media.
Yeah.
So not only you used to get it at school before, maybe a bit on the BBC, now you're being bombarded 24 hours a day, every day of the week with all this propaganda crap that we're rubbish. And we need to ask ourselves, who benefits from this? It's our enemies. I think this is purely a psychops from different countries around the world. Iran, Russia, China. I think they're funding a lot of this and supporting a lot of this because the best way to win a war is by not fighting that war and letting your enemy destroy itself.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here. We've got to a stage now where many young people now say they wouldn't fight to save this country.
Yeah.
Well, if I was Russia or if I was China, especially because the war's coming with China, we might have a skirmish with Russia, but Russia's a nobody now. They can't even beat Ukraine.
Yeah.
But China's a world power. They're going to start conquering countries soon. And most of our young people are saying, well, I wouldn't fight. Well, China's laughing.
Well, I guess there's 2 points there, and I fully agree with you. I think a lot of it is perpetuated by our media, and this is about not just a hatred of our country, but a hatred of our skin as well, our colour, and racism comes into this as well. Asking white people to there's critical race theory all the time, saying how about colonialism, how we're all racist, how toxic masculinity, all those things are happening, and the media perpetuates this as well. Quite interestingly, just there were a couple of articles in the Guardian and the Times this week, and they were kind of, again, this kind of pseudoscientific crap about, climate change is coming, and the way we stop climate change is by having less kids. You know, you're selfish now if you want to have kids. This is the latest thing, isn't it? You're a bastard if you have children because you're destroying the planet. We're making people feel guilty. And again, we know that the birth rate is already far too low in this country and is getting lower. But what was fascinating about these two articles is they had pictures of babies on there. These babies that are causing all white.
Of course.
Of course,
You can't start talking about killing babies and have a black or brown baby there.
Yeah.
That's a hate crime.
Yeah. Every other article or thing you see with children, or there's 3 or 4 black children populating it. In this article, which is about how children are destroying the planet, only white kids, basically.
So I would take these people more seriously if they said we need less people on this planet, and therefore by the time you read this article, I'll be dead.
Yeah.
I would take them more seriously then. But these people don't want to kill themselves and their children.
I see what you mean.
They want to kill other people. They want you to stop breathing. They don't want you to have children. We'll decide who has children because we don't need more people like you. We need more people like me and my children, my friends' children. It's never about them. They should kill themselves.
Yes.
Just before they release the article. Then I would take them seriously.
Yeah. Well, it's classic, isn't it? It's a classic. Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
And we're back to Starmer spending the money on his, clothes and taking money for his clothes. Starmer can do what the hell he wants. He can take whatever. But you guys, by the way, pensioners, you're not having your fuel allowance. You can't have any money or any kind of benefits. So it's this patriarchal, overriding, narcissistic approach to us all the time that happens. That is really.
We need to be really careful of people who tell us solutions to our problem are less humans, because that will lead to a very terrible place. We've got the government at the moment trying to rush through assisted suicide. Well, that'll get abused. I guarantee that will get abused. I'm a nasty piece of work. My mum's really old. She's got this big house. If I can talk her into going now, I get the house.
Yeah.
We know how devious evil humans can be.
Yeah.
And then, they want less
Not
children.
even evil humans, Nick. I think normal human beings, when it's about money, are incredibly devious and will...
Absolutely.
And they'll convince themselves as well, it's best for mum.
Best for her.
Yeah, it'll be best for
her quality of life is not...
you're not... Mum, you're not enjoying life at the moment. You'd be happy with the old injection, won't you?
And then the next stage from that will be, okay, who in society isn't productive enough? Let's get rid of them.
Yes. Who
in society doesn't follow? Let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
This is a very slippery slope to go down.
Well, it's interesting. In the last episode, we were talking about Starmer's attack on pensioners, and I was reflecting because we were talking about the fact they want to increase the pension age to 68. What they're actually doing is crushing that gap, aren't they? So we're killing pensioners here by not letting them heat their homes, so they're all dying off here. We're pushing the pension age up to 68 as well, so there's less pensioners coming into the market. And now let's start euthanizing them as well, because they're getting old and useless and they don't really fit. And you end up with a very, very small number of pensioners then, which is great for the government, isn't it?
Which will be healthy rich ones.
Healthy rich ones, yeah.
Just like all these politicians will be when they retire.
Yes. We're making life much nicer for healthy rich pensioners, which will be in about 5 years' time. Yeah. And by the way, those healthy rich pensioners won't be allowed to have a pension because they'll be means tested, won't they, as well? Yeah. So they won't be taking a pension, they won't be getting access to the National Health Service because they'll be using private medicine. Yeah. So it's all fantastic, isn't it? So that could be part of the plan. But carrying on with why the British people are now despising Britain, Slow Horses, have you seen that programme?
I've watched all the series up to I've not watched the latest one yet.
So the latest one's out, and I've been thinking it's been okay. I think it's fairly amateurish, but I quite like Gary Oldman, who sold out, by the way. He was probably one of our greatest British actors when he was a young man, and he buggered off to America, got drunk and lived a debauched life, made millions over there, sold out basically. But he was probably our greatest British actor, I would say, probably 30 years ago. So it's a shame he went to America and sold out. Anyway, he's come back and he's in this program called Slow Horses. And I started watching and thinking, please don't let it be woke. Please don't let it be woke. And then, of course, what happens at the very beginning? One of the characters is caught up in a terrorist explosion at a shopping centre. And guess who carried out the terrorist attack at the shopping centre in London?
Wasn't a white far right man, was it?
It was, yes. Yes. So, despite the fact, God, despite the fact that 99% of terrorist attacks, explosions in this country and all other countries are carried out by Muslim extremists, it was a white bloke who did it, of course. You know, and there was a YouTube. It was up on their YouTube immediately. Even when it's meant to be MI5 or MI6, this thing, they weren't working. They were saying, "Oh, who did this?" Nobody was saying, "Well, let's go through our normal list of Muslim terrorists here to see who might have done this." It was immediately, yeah, it's a white bloke, you know. And then it turned out he was involved in MI5. So the whole thing was like, as soon as I saw that, I thought, for God's sake, can't they even be realistic in this situation about this? There's no way, is there? They could have possibly had an Asian person in that picture when they first flashed it up on the screen, is there?
The amount of boxes they would have to tick at Apple, 'cause it's made by Apple, isn't it?
This is made by Apple, yeah.
The amount of boxes they would have to tick to present a script to them where the bad person in this series is going to be a brown Muslim living in the UK. They know that's not being produced, that story. So, and this is what happens in Hollywood in these things. You know what they don't like, so you don't give them what they don't like, even though you've got to change your script and change the story. Yeah. Give them what... You're a businessman, you know it yourself, you're trying to get a deal.
Yeah.
You'll give them what they want.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to sell your script and produce a TV series for Apple and make yourself a couple of million, give them what they want. But it's damaging everything, isn't it?
Yeah. And it perpetuates this thing, isn't it? It's about white men bad, Britain bad, English people bad. It's the same story all the time. No wonder people are pissed off and have such a low opinion and are not proud of Britain anymore. Because it's unrelenting.
And people don't see bravery or courage or English heroes.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to look up to. You're only hearing the negativity. And there's nothing to look up to at all anywhere in the country anymore.
Yeah. Well, there is. It's just we're just never told about it.
I'm sure.
So it's like the London Bridge attacks. You told me that story. The guy who stopped the guy was he an Englishman or something, or an Irishman? I can't remember. It was.
I think it was Polish or something.
It was who basically tackled a white guy who tackled it. But you don't hear anything about these characters, or briefly you hear something about them. The guy who stopped the Southport killer. He was a white working class guy. Do you remember his name?
No.
Yeah, do you see what I mean? It's kind of this guy had said it, but we'll just shove him off to the side now. We don't want to hear about any kind of heroism from English people. And then kind of the other side of the coin on this one. There's a new film on Netflix called Rebel Ridge. I don't know if
I've watched it.
Yeah, so it kept flashing up on my Netflix, #1 film, whatever, and the picture was a black man. Surrounded by a bunch of white guys kind of staring at him. And I thought, I'm not watching this shit because I know what it's going to be about. It's going to be about a black guy who's wrongly oppressed because of his race and his colour by racist white men, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, and then there was I think there was a black woman on there, and she'll be she'll be a heroine at some point like that. So I refused to watch it. So then I refused to watch it, and then I was reading the various reviews, and people saying, "Oh, it's not bad." That I thought, "Oh God, I'll give it a go." And I watched it, and there wasn't any racism in it at all. Yeah. There was no racial references, and I felt quite ashamed because I thought, "This is what they've done to me now. They've indoctrinated me so much. They've pumped me so full of crap for so long. I'm now even suspicious of a program with a black person in because I think there's going to be a little shitty political message in there." And it was actually not too bad.
And the black woman, who you think's going to be, looks like she's going to be the good guy.
Yes.
Turns out she's a bitch.
She's a bitch. She's a bad. And the good guy's a white guy.
Yeah.
The good guy on the inside was a white guy. So it was like it completely, and I was ashamed of myself that I'd assumed it would be, but it kind of tells the story that.
I wouldn't be ashamed because humans are very good at seeing patterns and noticing patterns, and that's how we survive. You know, we see a big cat with big teeth coming towards us. Only has to take it eating one of our tribe people to know, I keep away from that. So when we see patterns, and that's what you've seen all these modern shows, and you've noticed a pattern now, and so I don't blame you coming to that conclusion.
So, but kind of all that kind of feeds into what I said about the fact we are constantly being indoctrinated, pummeled with ideas, things that run against the reality but run for the narrative that they're pushing onto us.
But Hollywood seems to be rejecting a lot of this now because it's killing them at the box office.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, was it the Emmys the other night or something?
Yeah, but I don't know.
My wife was watching it. She said a lot of the prizes were won by white people. She said it's the first time she's seen it for a while.
Right.
There's always kind of the disproportionate wheeling a bunch of black people or whatever. She said a lot of the prizes were won by shows with white people or with white stars. So whether that dynamic is shifting or not, I don't know.
It is across Hollywood, because at the end of the day, what do Hollywood care about? Their bottom line, money. So they've played with DEI.
Yeah.
It's not working. Now they're going back to whatever we think the public want, because they're the ones who want it and either watch it or not watch it. So we will hopefully we'll start getting some better programs coming through now.
I think interestingly, a definitive thing on that was the Tom Cruise film that came out. I don't know if it was this year or last year, where he's a pilot. I can't remember what it's called. Top Gun, but it was called Top Gun. It was a remake. It was called Top Gun.
It was Part 2. Yeah.
Part 2. But that film was just simply adventure, excitement. There were no message. There was no wokeness in it at all.
There was 2 female pilots.
Were there?
So they picked the 10 top pilots, fighter pilots in the country.
Oh yeah.
And 2 or 3 of them happened to be women. It's like there would be none in that group.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's just feeding into your hatred of women narrative. That's nothing to do. I didn't even notice that, Nick.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
But the film itself was good because there were no political messages.
Yeah, there were no political messages in the film at all,
Yeah.
and there was no reference to racism.
No.
Nothing. It was simple, full-on adventure.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
From beginning to end, and I think that gave Hollywood a shock because
Yeah.
they hate Tom Cruise, by the way. He's never won an Oscar.
Many people do. I believe he's not a nice person. But he's the only action hero.
What actors are nice people? I don't think there's any actors nice people. Right. I love him. I think he's fantastic. I know he's a Scientologist. I know he's slightly crazy. He's a Scientologist or whatever. He makes great films.
He does.
He makes great films, and he knows what makes a great film as well. And he's been doing it, and he's in fantastic nick. Yeah. You know, I mean, he's
stunts and everything.
He's 10 years older than you, but he looks 10 years younger than you.
He does.
So that kind of tells us a story.
I'm 2 foot taller.
You may be taller than him, that's true, I'll give you that. But he's never won an Oscar. So Hollywood hate him.
They must, because, he's done some films that you'd imagine Hollywood would love.
Yeah.
Such as
that American
Rain Man and there's done films where you think, people win Oscars for those sort of films.
Well, there's that film where he's in a wheelchair and he plays an American vet.
Yeah, I didn't like that. 4th of July.
4th of July, that was quite a good film then.
No, I've watched it twice, and both times went, I don't enjoy that one.
Interview with a Vampire?
Only watched it once and didn't think much of it.
Right. I'm trying to think of an Oscar-winning performance by him.
Yeah. No, he's done some excellent films.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Mission Impossible films, he's making a fortune out of them.
Yeah.
They're okay for bubblegum films.
No, they're good films to watch. I love watching them.
The latest films he's done, which I was shocked he's doing no more, are the Jack Reacher films. Those 2
it's too small to be Jack Reacher.
I know, but if you never read the book, you wouldn't know.
Yes.
But
I've read quite a few of the 2
Jack Reacher films I thought were excellent.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't really rate them.
But you'd read the books.
Yes.
I hadn't, so I didn't know
who Jack Reacher is 6'5" or 6'6".
Yeah.
And he's incredibly big and muscular.
Yeah.
And he's prone to extreme violence, which he can deliver because he's so big. Yeah. Whereas Tom Cruise
isn't.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people went to see that had read the books.
Right.
And I think they just couldn't match mentally.
I get that.
Yes.
I'd never heard of Jack.
Even with his heels on, he's only 5'7". So, but yeah, that's interesting. I might watch them again then, given your recommendation.
I thought those 2 films were excellent. Yeah, I thought.
Moving on to the media. Recently, there was a review done of the BBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. I don't know if you saw this article.
Did. No surprises there.
We're talking again about the media and how corrupt it is and how the narratives are decided for us and whatever. And this really gives an example. So they breached their guidelines. Guess how many times they breached their guidelines?
I think it was 1,500.
1,500 times they breached their guidelines in the coverage of in terms of bias against Israel and pro-Hamas. 27%. There's a channel called BBC Arabic channel, I believe.
No. Okay.
27% of the people they interviewed on the BBC Arabic channel were either connected to racist terrorist groups like Hamas or had promoted anti-Semitic material.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just shocking, isn't it?
It expected, absolutely.
1,500 times they breached their guidelines.
I didn't think it'd be that many until I read it myself. First question that popped into my mind is, can you imagine the outlaw if that was GB News?
Oh God, yes. They'd be off in the air.
They'd be off. They'd be gone.
Yeah, yeah.
1,500
Yeah,
breaking their own rules.
yeah,
They'd be off air.
yeah.
I don't know how the BBC get away with. Well, the BBC now is a propaganda arm for the elite. They
Yeah.
have been for decades. The BBC do what the BBC do, and the elite like what they do because the BBC is full of the elite. Politicians select who runs the BBC, so everybody's playing the game of trying to keep the government, whoever the government is, but the elite, the establishment, happy. And these are all the opinions of the establishment. I don't know why the BBC can't just be objective. I mean, this is a foreign problem, so who cares to a certain extent? Just say the facts. We don't need opinion pieces on who's right, who's wrong. Just facts. And also with the BBC, why have we still got an Arabic arm? Why have we still got a world service? Why are we funding all these things? Because it's all online now. We don't need the World Service anymore to be the voice of freedom across the world, because even in this country we don't believe the BBC. So why are we funding the BBC to lie to people around the world? BBC's too big, has too much money, and has too many tentacles in too many places. It needs to be slashed to the bone.
Yeah, I mean, if I was put into power tomorrow, the first thing I'd do is close the BBC. I know you've always been against that. You've always said they need to be phased over time. I'd just close the doors. I'd just say, you're all fired. And by the way, I'm changing the employment laws so public sector employees can be sacked with no compensation. Yeah? So everybody who works at the BBC, I don't care how long you've worked there, you'll get no redundancy pay. You're out of a job. And that's part of your punishment for perpetuating crap and stealing from the taxpayer for the past 20 years. Because anybody who's been there at the BBC for 30, 40 years has been complicit in feeding us the crap, in taking our money, our pension money as well, without complaining, and must have seen things and condoned things that are unacceptable to the. So therefore, you're all sacked. No compensation for anybody. Go and find yourself a proper job, and I'm closing the BBC. I don't think anybody would miss it.
I think lots of people would miss it.
Just the pensioners, and there's going to be hardly any of those left soon.
Yeah, Starmer's making. Maybe that's what he's doing to get rid of the BBC. The BBC is not fit for purpose. It hasn't been for a long time. The only solution to the BBC is they need to generate their own income, which is advertisement. And to do that, they're going to have to slash. I don't know why the BBC have radio stations. We have enough radio stations in this country. They're all competing against each other commercially, and the big one has no commercial worries, so keeps them all small. If you got rid of the BBC radio, all local radio stations would take off, because suddenly they'll get a bigger share of the market. All the World Service, all that stuff needs to go. And I don't understand why we can't have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 TV channels, BBC, subscriber based.
Yeah. But also, I mean, what's left in the BBC? Hugh Edwards has been convicted yesterday of being a pedo, and he's on his way. And this is the guy who presented the news for how many years? 20 years. So now they can't show any news clips with him in, can they?
No.
So there's a whole load of stuff that they're not going to be able to show anymore now, including the Queen's. Did you do the Queen's burial? Did you do? So we can't even now show clips of the Queen's burial, God bless her, because that bastard was talking over it while he was hanging his arse out of his trousers.
They can cut the voices out and stuff. But I get your point.
Or they're going to have to get somebody to redub it over the top of it, basically.
Well, same with Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
There's lots of people like that who the BBC have protected.
Yeah. Well, apparently there's some new names coming out now of people they've protected. And as we said the other day, all they've done so far is sack Jermaine Janus, who hadn't really done anything wrong, basically. Part of what, of course, the media is promoting all the time is the idea that there's nothing wrong with immigration, multiculturalism and all that sort of stuff. I think what's interesting to see now is that is shifting dramatically in Europe.
Oh, yes.
And we've seen in the last week, Germany particularly has made quite a dramatic stance. They've started to deport migrants back to Afghanistan. But more importantly than that, they've closed their borders, I think, now.
They've closed.
You made me need to give them
They've closed all their land borders.
Yes.
So they're still open if you turn up and you've got a passport.
Yeah.
You'll be allowed in.
Yeah.
But the free movement across Europe, called the Schengen area,
Yeah.
which means, we talked about last time, where you can travel from Portugal all the way through to Germany, all the way up to Denmark, without a passport, that's gone now.
Yeah.
Germany said they're doing it for 6 months to get a grip on illegal immigration. But once it's been done, I can't see how they go back, because they're only doing it because of the ADF. They're only doing it because they can see them losing power at the next election if they don't clamp down. If they've imposed these border restrictions now, I can't see how they ever take them away, because the ADF are there chomping at the bit.
Yes, yeah. And I think
Austria have already said, whoever Germany turn away from the border, we're going to turn them away as well.
Yeah.
So Austria wants to make sure they're not the dumping ground. Holland's looking at doing something similar. We need to be careful in this country that they don't create a tunnel effect. It all gets pushed to the channel, and
this is now what they're talking about. So that currently Starmer's in Italy with Meloni, getting advice off Meloni how to stop immigration, because apparently the Europeans have reduced crossings from Africa and something like by 30 or 40% in the last year. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No. And how have they done it?
Well, that's why Starmer's flown over to meet Meloni to find out. But what everybody's worried about now is exactly what you've just described. That because we haven't taken any action, the French, for example, are allowing more and more immigrants to cross from France and get across there, that they will all be, as you say, funneled effectively towards England, who aren't taking any action.
Yeah.
So we're seeing Europe now taking action, Germany stopping people coming in, so they're going to skirt around Germany, heading to France or whatever, where they're going to go. And as more and more EU countries get tougher on their borders, this is what potentially could happen, which is quite scary.
A couple of things. The first thing is, I'm not sure the EU's done anything to reduce migration. If we look into this, we may find something like there's a new war in Africa, and the people trying to travel up Africa can't travel up as much now because there's all the bandits killing people.
Oh, I see.
I think that there's an external factor stopping the migration.
Stopping people from Africa.
I've not heard the Europeans doing anything to stop it.
Yeah.
So them taking credit for it, but politicians will take credit for anything that looks good.
Yeah.
So that might be the reason for that. And then the other point was... Carry on, I forgot my other point.
You've forgotten what it was. There's additionally 7 EU states want Syrian safe zones revised. So apparently at the moment they can't send Syrians back to Syria because the
country's unsafe.
Safe. But what they're asking, they're saying that, hang on a minute, these areas are safe. We want them redesignated as safe so we can send people back. So we're seeing a concerted effort now in Europe, and you're right, Holland, Sweden we already know is now reduced. They now have net emigration.
Yep.
We know that's happened. We know Holland has started to act, Geert Wilders, that side. Germany's taking specific actions. Well, I think there are other countries, you say, starting to impose these border checks.
Well, now Germany's done it, the big boys done it, other ones will start.
Germany's the most powerful country still in Europe, despite what's happened there. But once again, the country that's doing nothing is England. And there's a particular example I want to give first before hitting you with some stats, Nick, if you don't mind. There's an Afghan asylum seeker called Abdul Razima. I may pronounce him incorrectly. He was 19 years old, came from Afghanistan via Serbia, killed two people in Serbia, then applied for asylum in England, got into England by pretending to be 14. And there's a picture of this guy.
I know this story.
There's a picture of this guy. He's 19. He looks like a 19-year-old Afghani bloke, basically. Yeah. He was actually put in school with other 14-year-old children in classrooms in 2 classes in Dorset. He was kicked out of one school because he was found carrying a knife. So this guy is in with our children.
Yeah.
In schools with our children. A 19-year-old murderer is in schools with our children carrying a knife. It's got to that part. And then eventually he killed a 21-year-old English DJ, Tom Roberts, who was trying to stop a dispute. I think he was trying to steal a mountain bike or something, this guy. This young guy, Tom Roberts, tried to intervene, was stabbed and killed by him.
Yeah.
How the hell does that happen?
This is happening all the time across the country. We think migrants are coming here for a better life, to work hard. Some of them are. We're also now attracting the mentally ill from across the world. Because if you're this man, he's probably killed people in Afghanistan. That's probably why he left Afghanistan, because the other tribe were going to kill him because he killed someone in their clan. He gets in Europe, kills 2 people there, comes there, kills someone. That's what he will do. Many people are mentally ill who are coming here, and we can't stop anyone because our politicians don't have a backbone to stop any of them. We need to start holding some of these politicians accountable because they're directly responsible for the murder of British citizens in this country. Yeah. You're telling me we can't keep him out? You're telling me we can't determine he's not 19? You can do bone scans and a dentist can look at your teeth and guess how old you are, but we're not allowed to do that because it breaches their human rights. There's always an excuse why we can't fix a problem, and we need to end some of these excuses by pulling out of the ECHR and getting rid of some of whatever laws we've got. And we need to get around them or get out of them and just say, no, we're going to do what's best for the British people. But our government doesn't do that. Our government does what's best for what we think is morality. That's not your job.
It gets worse than this. So I think you and I agree there is too much immigration into this country.
Yeah.
And there's too much uncontrolled immigration. Yeah. By uncontrolled, I don't mean on the boats, because to me there's 3 elements of immigration. There's legal immigration, which is where people apply and say, I want to come and work here. And we know a lot of that's been coming from Pakistan and from Nigeria. Yeah. I think that's more of the predominant. Since the EU, since Brexit, they've just replaced...
India, Nigeria.
Yes, they're the main legal... So they're what we call legal immigration. Yeah. That's happening. We believe it's not controlled effectively. Yeah. There's illegal immigration, which is people on boats and other mechanisms getting into the country. We don't know what those numbers are. You may know what those numbers are. And then there's asylum seekers. Yeah. So these are people who are in a difficult position and they're saying, England, you're a fair country, you believe in justice, please give me asylum. Yes, and you know, I guess that's enshrined in the British culture, the British way of thinking, and despite the fact we hate ourselves, as we just found out in that survey, you know, the idea of fair play and being a haven for people who are seeking asylum. So when I say to you, asylum seekers, you immediately think this is somebody from war-torn Yemeni or war-torn Nigeria, or so you immediately think of trouble spots, Syria, Afghanistan, or as that guy was an Afghan asylum seeker. In 2023, there were 84,000 applications for asylum to this, which is not a small number. Not a small number, because there's numbers it's the same every. If it's 100,000 a year, 10 years, it's 1 million people, isn't it? But these applications included a larger number from the following countries: India. Right, so we've now got people in India, which are regarded as a safe country, seeking asylum. Albania, Turkey, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Brazil, Georgia, Namibia, which is a very safe African country, Botswana, the Philippines, Trinidad and Tobago, Morocco, and Malaysia, and in addition there were 413 asylum applications from the EU. So the stupidity of this country, of this Home Office, we are taking asylum applications from safe countries, not just war-torn countries. We're taking them, that list of countries there, you and I would go on holiday to, wouldn't we? Without a second thought.
Yeah.
So why are we doing, what possible reason can we have to take asylum seekers from countries like that?
Because in the legislation, which will be a UN legislation or EU legislation, it will say you have to process them. So once they say, I want to claim asylum, you then have to treat them as legitimate asylum claim. We need to get away from that. We need to say we'll never take asylum claims from these countries and do a big list of countries we'll never take asylum because we don't believe any of yous. But asylum now, and it has been for several decades, getting worse every year, is just the latest illegal immigration scam. You can claim asylum and be approved in this country if you're gay. So many African countries and Middle Eastern countries will turn up here, I'm claiming asylum, I'm gay, I'm going to be persecuted at home. That's 100% legitimate reason to be granted asylum.
So potentially of those applications from the EU, there could be a gay bloke in Spain who's saying, I'm being oppressed because I'm gay and I live in this area of Spain, which is they're a bit homophobic.
It'd be harder to do that for Spain, but I don't understand the reasons for the European Union one. But,
No, I don't.
But other parts of the country, other parts of the world, you'll say gay. Also say you change religion. So if you're coming from a Middle Eastern country, just say I'm a Christian now.
Yeah.
That's enough for 100% for you to be granted asylum in this country. And once you've been granted asylum, you can then bring 8 relatives because then you've been connected with your family. So asylum now is just the latest in a long line of scams, immigration scams.
And the people in charge of this are the Home Office. And the most senior civil servant in the Home Office is a guy called Sir Matthew Rycroft. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No.
He's obsessed with DEI.
Right.
There's a picture of him at the Pride thing with his Pride t-shirt on, prancing around basically.
Well, that's how he got to the top of the Home Office.
Yeah. So how's somebody like that going to take a hard line in these situations?
They're not. And they've got no intentions of taking a hard line. And the governments don't want them to take a hard line. The only people who want them to take a hard line is me and you.
And there's a picture floating around Twitter. It's a picture of staff in the Home Office. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
There's 18 people in the picture. I don't know what department it is in the Home Office. It's an office picture. 18 people. At the very edge, there's one white bloke.
Yeah.
It's just his little face peeping in there. Now, it stands to reason, if that is representative of the Home Office, and I'm sure somebody will tell us that it isn't, but if they are populated with brown people, potentially immigrants themselves or whatever, the chances of you getting in must be much higher if you're an illegal immigrant or an immigrant.
It's worse than that. You need to Google the press stories for crimes in the Home Office helping illegal immigration. The amount of... We've got people who've been arrested...
Oh, you mean dishonesty?
Dishonesty in the Home Office.
Yeah.
Running scams in the Home Office while they're working there. We need to get to a stage where no one who wasn't born in this country should be able to work for the government. Because they don't have a vested interest in the country.
That's a radical view.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And
Why?
what's the rationale behind that for you?
Because A, the good jobs.
Yes.
So let's give our own people the good jobs.
Yes.
Instead of immigrants who come here. Those immigrants' children can have those good jobs.
Yeah.
But you're an immigrant. You need to prove yourself first by raising some decent children and paying taxes, and then your children will have the benefits of being here. But you've got a benefit just by being here. So don't tell me you're hard done by as an immigrant. People who are born here are more likely to want the country to succeed, will be less involved in fraud, because don't forget, these countries many of these people are coming from, endemic with fraud and corruption.
Yeah.
It's a way of life.
Yeah.
They don't think they're doing anything wrong. I did this when I lived in Botswana. This is what we always do. Well, not in this country. So I would restrict those jobs. But the Home Office, people have complained about the Home Office, politicians for decades now, saying it's too big and it's not fit for purpose. It needs closing down and it needs rebuilding, as in two different departments, to keep it small again, because it's just too big. and you can never get it to do anything.
It needs closing down.
Yeah.
So here's some interesting facts about the Home Office. They will currently not answer questions on the immigration status of prisoners. So we're not allowed to know how many of the prisoners are illegal, even though we do know, we think there's 10,400 foreign nationals in the prison.
Yeah, but that's not the same as illegal immigrants.
No, it's not the same as illegal immigrants, you're right, or immigrants, you're right.
Yeah.
They do not collect now nationality or immigration data on those who are arrested.
Of course they don't, because they saw the arrow and the graph and they went, stop recording this, Jesus, don't record this anymore. That's why.
So what does that mean then? We are not allowed, or we actually cannot find out what percentage of crime is committed by immigrants.
The Home Office, any government department, is not allowed to withhold information from the public. So what did they do?
Stop collecting it.
Stop collecting it.
Oh, I see. So they don't want that information out there.
We've done something wrong now, have we?
Yeah.
You've asked for it.
Yeah, it's not that we can't.
We haven't got it.
Yeah, we'll give it to you if we could, but we've stopped recording that information now. So we've said to the coppers, don't record the immigration status of anybody you arrest from now on.
Yeah.
That can't be right, can it?
No. It's underhand fraud, and they need to be pulled up on this. But again, governments don't want this being reported either, because that will just give them a problem.
But we've talked about this because there are some countries in the EU that do record this data.
Yeah, sure
I think Germany.
Yeah.
I think we've covered this data before, and the percentage of crime carried out by immigrants was phenomenally high, enormous. I think it was Paris we were talking about.
Again, that's not the same as illegal immigrants.
Right. Okay.
So,
No, I think it's just talking about immigrants here, immigration, people who've been immigrants. Crime. It's talking about crime, immigration data on people who've been arrested, because the Home Office is responsible for that as well.
Yeah.
The Home Office will now not reveal how much it is spending on hotel accommodation for migrants. I didn't know that. Is that a new one? Because we knew that data.
It is a new one. The last thing I heard was 7
million a year, a day.
Yeah, yes. So 7-8 billion a year was the last figure I saw, and then suddenly they're not telling us anymore. So we know which way that graph's gone, don't we? We know which way that graph's gone.
The Home Office has also said it doesn't know how much it spends on refugee loans. I don't know what refugee loans are. I presume that's money they're giving to refugees to get housing, whatever it might be.
So refugees are not entitled to public funds. So what did they do? They create a new thing called loans. And we give you loans with no expectation of them ever being paid back.
Oh, I see.
But we're not allowed to give you public funds.
So it's not a grant, it's a loan.
It's a loan.
But you're never going to pay it back, mate.
Absolutely. And the reason why they won't want to tell you how much that is, again, because they've seen the graph.
They're now actually hiding information about the cost of furnishing flats for asylum seekers. So information is requested for 346 flats that were refurbished in Hampshire for asylum seekers. This is the 83,000 we were talking about before, who've come from everywhere but trouble spots. It's now not available under the Freedom of Information Act. I don't know how the hell they've got away with that.
There'll be caveats. There'll be caveats within the Freedom of Information Act if it breaches state secrets, if it will put someone in harm, so they've looked at that and went, we can get away with it on this one. So they're doing up those flats for asylum seekers, and they don't want to tell us why. It's the same answer. They've seen the graph and went, the people will go mental.
Two more. The Department of Work and Pensions has stopped publishing data on welfare claims by nationality.
Again, because of the graph. The government is last couple of governments have been absolutely terrified on all these figures. And we're finally, I'm not sure when this started, it probably started under the Tories, but they've said stop recording all this because you keep recording it gives us a problem we cannot solve. We'd rather just not have the problem.
And finally, HMRC have stopped publishing tax paid and tax credits received by nationality. I mean, this is scandalous.
So we know the answers, don't we?
Yes.
We all know the answers, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
I mean, this is scandalous, isn't it, really, that this is happening. I have got one bit of data which might be useful for our listeners to understand maybe some of this. Apparently 70% of Muslim women in the UK are unemployed versus 27% of Christian women or English women, whatever it might be. So that's one bit of data. So maybe that then explains why they're not publishing data on tax paid by nationality, because it will show a disproportionate amount of less tax paid by certain races, creeds.
I'm sure it will. I also don't think that stat is actually a bad thing, because mothers should be at home looking after children. Not they should be.
Yeah.
You will get better children.
Yes.
You'll get a better society.
Yeah.
So, there's certain things, even though I think this is the greatest country ever to exist, there's still certain things we can learn from other cultures and other countries. And having mothers at home raising children and being there for them will always pay dividends to a society. Unless they raise some of those nutcases who blow us up and stab teenagers to death. But they're only a very small percentage.
But we have talked about in the past the problem within the Pakistani community of marrying close relatives.
First cousins, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that causes, we know, levels, I think you told me the levels of birth defects amongst...
50% of all severely disabled children born in this country are Pakistani first marriage children.
Yes.
50%.
Yes. But so
costing us billions.
Maybe that's why the mothers have got to stay at home.
It'll be part of it. Yeah. Again, they're also staying at home because, again, another thing I like about some of the immigrant communities is they look after their own old people. They don't, most of them don't stick them in homes. So, but hiding the information isn't the answer, because then is a great breeding ground for false information and conspiracy theories. So let's have the information, and then we can explain that's good, that's bad.
But I think this is part of the sustained attack, though, on the endemic British population, isn't it?
We're not allowed to know. And the reason why we're not allowed to know is because deep down inside, I've said it before, they're scared of us. Starmer was scared of us at the Southport riots. Why he came down with a heavy iron glove. They're scared of us. If we can just understand that they're scared of us and we can mobilise, we can make them do basically what we want them to do. We just don't know we're powerful.
Yes.
They've convinced us we're weak, we're pathetic, we're stupid. There's nothing we can do. Don't even bother voting. Nothing changes.
Yeah.
But all that's a trick they've played on us because they're terrified of us.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that in a minute, because I've been thinking about this and reading about this, about mobilize. How do we mobilise? And part of this for me is understanding who we're trying to persuade as well, who people like you and I are trying to persuade here. Because I think the mistake we can make is that we try and persuade people who are on the other side, the woke, the elite, whatever, trying to persuade them they're wrong. I think that's a mistake, because I think you're never going to persuade those people. They believe they're right. Those are the people who are pushing these narratives, suppressing information, arresting innocent English people for nothing. I don't think you're ever going to convince those people. But I think there is a mass of people who haven't particularly got strong opinions or feelings at the moment. And those are the people to convince if we mobilise them.
I don't think we need to convince them. I think what we need to do is to make sure everybody can hear what we're saying.
Yeah.
And the more normal people are speaking up on many platforms, in the workplace, at home, on the media, the more people are doing that, the more the average person hears it and will go, well, I think they'll go, that's how I feel. And the more voice, the more sound we can make on that, the more politicians will go, right, the wind's changing here.
Yeah.
And I'm a politician and I just want to be voted in again. I'm noticing the wind change. I'm going to start changing my views and my policies.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
Yeah.
We don't have to win. We could win all the country over. If the politicians still don't care, nothing we can do. But I know politicians are Weasley characters who just want to be elected again. And if we can shout louder and they can see, Jesus, there's 15 million people there who would vote for someone if they have these policies. Well, Labour won the election on 9 million and there's 15 million wanting this, I could win.
Yeah.
And that's how our system's supposed to, is that how it's supposed to work.
A lot of our viewers are saying when we're talking about Labour, how crap they are. They do say that Labour won with only 20% of the vote.
20% of the people who were entitled to vote.
Yes.
Yeah. So they won a third of the electorate who voted, but that equates to 20% of
Yes.
all voters.
Yeah.
But 40% didn't vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're ruled by a minority.
Yes.
We're ruled, and I'm not sure our listeners understand this. We are controlled by a party that only got 20% of the electorate's vote, which means that 80% of the electorate didn't vote for them.
Yeah.
If we can mobilise at 80% to get out on the streets, to start saying what they think, they will just crumble and die, this party. They will just wither away because they are by far in the minority. And just saying simple things like, men cannot be women, there's too much immigration into this country, there is no such thing as critical race theory, there is no such thing as being intrinsically racist as being white. All those things, is saying that Islam is not a religion that's suitable for this country, or the Islamic theology and ideology is not appropriate for this country. Just by saying those simple things at dinner parties, to colleagues, just simple sentences will start to make the difference, I think. And that's all these people need to, that 80%, that's all they need to start saying.
Yeah. Last week you said to me, we need to start giving people simple things that they can do.
Yes.
In the fight. And I was thinking about it all last week, and I'm writing a book at the moment which should be out next month called England, My England. And I've just started a new chapter in the book, all about how individuals can fight back. And depending on your position, what you can do, how you can fight back without losing your job, how you can fight back without ending up in prison, how you can be brave, how you can be courageous, how you can fight sneaky. And this chapter is all about what you can do.
Why not write a book on that, Nick? Why not write a little handbook, how to fight back? Because I think people need that guidance and that direction. But I think that's a great idea that you're putting a chapter on that in your book.
Yeah.
Because I think that's all people need, just a bit of a lead on how to fight against this tyranny that we're experiencing. And the tyranny that gets worse on a daily basis. We're now finding they're holding back information from us deliberately because it doesn't suit their narrative.
Yeah.
It's shocking, and we need to fight against this, and we just need that 80% to understand that they're 80%, not that the Labour Party, in my view, is not in power, not with 20% of the votes. To understand that we are the majority, we just have to be vocal, get out there. And I think Tommy Robinson's doing a march on the 27th, is it 27th of October?
I can't remember what.
Be there or be square, folks, yeah? So I think he's going to London on the 27th of October, although we don't know where he is at the moment.
Yeah.
I think people need to mobilise and go with him as well and protest peacefully for this.
Yeah, I think we need to concentrate on the 40% of people who don't vote.
Yes.
Because the people who vote Labour, they like Labour.
Yeah, yeah.
The diehard Labour.
Yeah. Well, I think leave those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Leave them.
Yeah.
The people who voted Tory, after 14 years of shambles, they're going to carry on voting Tory. If that didn't stop them voting Tory, then nothing will.
Unless they see a party emerging that represents their Tory views, which are more likely to be closer to that 40%. I don't know.
No, I think
right, okay.
it's the Wets
It's a fair point.
who voted
Yes.
Tories.
Yeah.
They're going to carry on voting that way if the party stays the same. Same with the Dems. The 40% of people who didn't vote, and that works out at 20 million people.
Wow.
If 5 million, if a quarter of that voted Reform, we'd probably have another government.
Yeah. You're right.
They're the power brokers.
Yeah.
So the ones who like their parties, forget them. That 40% of people, we need to convince them that your vote matters. Your vote is important because you can change the direction. You staying at home and not voting means you're a coward. You staying at home and not voting means you don't care about this country. You staying at home and thinking, this means nothing, my vote's not important, just means you're stupid. People died to get us to vote. And the second the working class got the vote, the elite convinced us no point voting. You're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
get
yeah.
whatever we say. Don't
Yeah,
vote. You know,
yeah.
stay home, watch TV.
Yeah.
No point voting. They're
Yeah.
playing a trick on you.
Yeah.
Your ancestors would be appalled at you staying at home
Yeah.
and not voting.
Yeah.
That's what we need to change.
I'm not sure they played a trick on the voters. What I think they did was, people were voting, and then what they realised is their votes for a party that made promises, those promises were never honoured. So they realised it was a waste of time, and they have only been given two choices, Labour and Tories, and no matter which one they vote for, ends up not delivering what they promised. I think that's what's happened. That's why people don't vote now. I don't think they're stupid. I think they realise, but I think you're right, there's a third way. It's for them to understand how much power they have, basically.
Exactly.
And to somehow mobilise that is the key. I just want to talk a bit more about the political prisoners. So I've got my two little snap lines now. Free David Burley. David Burley is the guy who got 9 years.
Yeah.
I just think that is unacceptable. I don't care that he fricking set something on fire outside a hotel. I don't care. You don't get 9 years for that. You don't get 9 years for that when bloody Hugh Edwards walks free so free David Burley and free Keith Edwards, who's an 81-year-old they stuck in prison, which is scandalous.
What did he do?
I don't know. But regardless, 81... No, I don't think he's a paedophile. I think he's somebody who was involved in the riots.
No.
He might be the one that shouted at a police force. I don't know. It was something innocuous. I'll find out and let you know what he did. So this is now this is the kind of the second. This is how they're now doubling down. Basically, there's now a criminal investigation into who gave the CCTV footage from Manchester Airport to the MEN. So they're not actually sticking those awful guys, those Asian guys who battered the hell out of those coppers and
not been charged yet.
They've not even been charged. They're running free. They're on bail. They're running free. They're now trying to find the person who released the footage to MEN. God knows why. What is wrong with us seeing that footage and seeing what actually happened in that situation?
The same reason why the Home Office won't give us the information.
Yeah.
Is because they don't want us to see what they don't want us to see. And they didn't want us to see that footage. And if that person who releases that footage gets away with it, then other people across the country may release footage of other incidents that they don't want us to see. So again, they want to use this as an example to send a message around. Don't share information you're not allowed to share, otherwise we're coming for you.
They are bastards.
This is Soviet Union. This is Nazi Germany.
Yeah. So two examples I'm going to give you now, which just shows how horrifically unfair this is, and that these truly are political prisoners. A guy called Ben Robertson hospitalised another guy called Chris Goulding. Basically smashed his face in. It resulted in 4 metal plates in his head and 16 screws to hold his jaw together over some trivial incident. This Ben Robertson guy was allowed to walk free from court because it was deemed that the overcrowded prison would be hard on his mental health. Right. So this guy, there's pictures of this Chris Goulding guy hospitalised in a hospital bed, tubes in him, or nearly dead, basically, allowed to walk free from court.
Yeah. Because he's not a threat to the government. He only kills people, or tries to kill people where he lives. He doesn't live in Westminster. He's not a threat to us. Our criminal justice system is appalling. It's falling apart.
It is falling apart. And this is why the people need to get on the streets.
Yeah.
Hugh Edwards, the convicted paedophile, has just been given a 6-month suspended sentence despite being in possession of extreme child pornography. Yeah. Compare this to the sentence some of these political prisoners have had.
We've not been sending paedophiles like him for watching stuff to jail. Ever. Appalling, we should, but we never do.
But somebody who shouts "you're not English anymore" at a copper ends up in prison. Somebody watching a riot ends up in prison. And there's a little quote I saw, which I thought when I was reading this, which is, there is a kind of sadness that comes from knowing too much, from seeing the world as it truly is. And I think we're seeing that now, aren't we? And it is sad.
Absolutely. This reminds me of, I was 20 years old, had a girlfriend when I lived in Devon. I worked for Pontins. I was a cocktail barman.
I can imagine
Pontins.
you with your, what is it, blue jacket is it they wear?
Red jackets.
Red jackets on, yeah.
And I had a girlfriend there who was the most loveliest person, very trusting. And I spent some of my time trying to wise her up, because she lived in this little, she was from Devon, this
isn't a story where you end up in prison for
lived in this
assault.
little sleepy village. And I spent some time trying to wise her up, to
open her eyes.
Open her eyes, how dangerous the world can be, and you've got to be careful. And then one of our friends, who was a lot older than us, pulled me one side. Why are you doing that, Nick? I went, because he went, don't you think she lives in a better world than you do? And I went, she does, doesn't she? She went, you don't want to give her all your negativity growing up on a council estate, seeing violence. She lives in a very nice world in her head. Let her continue. You watch out for her, but don't ruin her reality. And that's what can happen sometimes when we're given information. We think everything's fine, or we think it's not that bad, and we get all the information which they're holding back from us now, and we go, God, it's not nice, is it? Things are going wrong.
Yes, but then don't you become a dodo? And by that, what I mean is, we know what happened to the dodos.
We do.
Living their happy little existence.
Yeah.
As soon as a hostile force arrived, they were wiped out.
We had a discussion the other week about the blue pill.
Yes.
In the Matrix, where the guy says, can you just give me the blue pill? I want to go back in the Matrix. Because reality is hard work.
Yeah.
Reality and personal responsibility means life isn't going to be a box of roses all the time, and you're going to have to work hard and take the slings and arrows and fail and be upset. And some people will go, I'd rather just take the blue pill.
Yeah.
Many people like me and you would never take the blue pill again. But some people would take the blue pill.
Yeah. Well, my instinct now is, and I think you know that you've been awake for decades, but I only woke up probably just before, so when was COVID? 2019. So I've probably only been awake for six or 7 years.
Yeah.
But I would never go back. And I think you have to be awake to be in the fight, don't you? There's a fight going on here. There's a battle.
Yeah, there is.
For our country, for our lives, for our way of life, for all sorts of things. And you've got to be awake to be in the fight, haven't you?
You do, and it has to be reality.
Yeah.
Has to be reality. Yeah. We've got fake friends online now. You can get a fake girlfriend online, and it might be better than having no girlfriend or no friends, but it comes nowhere near having a real girlfriend or real friends. They're developing sex machines now, and I'm sure.
Can you put a link on the?
They're all being designed now, especially in Japan. But I'm sure it won't be as good as having sex with a real woman. So it depends what you value. If you value safety and a beige life, then no one's great. If you want excitement and to feel alive, that's why people go rock climbing and do dangerous sports. Because for a couple of seconds they're alive.
Yeah.
And would you trade that? They'd never trade that for safety.
Yeah. But that's what I think I'm saying when I'm saying we mobilise people. I'm talking about mobilising the safe people into just saying things like men can't be women.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as critical race. There is the critical race theory. The imprisonment of those guys was wrong and unfair. Just some very basic things
to get them in the fight.
To get them in the fight, because that's all they need to do to get in the fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You don't
We're
need
not
to
asking them to charge the machine gun nest.
Correct.
We're saying doing nothing is not an option.
Yeah.
Doing anything is worthwhile.
Correct.
We don't expect you to charge the machine gun nest.
And I think that's the only message I want to get across.
Yeah.
Just do that one thing. Make that one statement. Yeah. Free speech is being compromised in this country. Just say things when you're in your dinner party with your friends over the garden fence. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Just say one thing, and that will start to shift the whole thing. I think you told me, didn't you, about the the French Revolution was located to a small number of. Or some, I think you were telling me there was
that wasn't me. I think you were telling me.
Oh, was I telling you? Yeah. I saw somebody talking about it. The French Revolution was isolated to 4 or 5 cafes in Paris. That's where it started. Yeah. And those guys somehow got the message to the people. Just say one thing or think one thing.
Because it was the right message.
Yeah.
And people were ready for a new message. Because they were ready to be turned. They were ready to fight because their lives were awful.
And I think that people are ready. I don't know if you noticed. Did you see Starmer turning up at Doncaster races?
Being booed.
And
they're all shouting wanker, wanker,
Yeah,
wanker.
yeah.
And did you see the MP, female MP, with her children trying to have Sunday lunch in a pub and being driven out by people in there booing?
Yes. Oh, was it? I thought it was a guy walking in to the pub. I've seen one where a guy walks into when he's booed out. Get out of my pub, I'm not serving. Have you not seen that one?
No.
And so I think the people are waking up.
Yeah.
And one of the things they were shouting at Starmer was traitor. And I think people should, whenever they see Starmer, shout traitor. Because that's what he is. He's a traitor to the country. And I think eventually, if people just do that, and I wish more people need to do what happened at Doncaster races, boo this guy, shout at him that he's a traitor, because he is a traitor. And, he will then start to see that he isn't loved, he isn't popular.
Those things have a mental impact on you.
Yeah, yeah.
When people are shouting at you, screaming at you, calling you names. Because I went through it when I was cancelled and all mine was online.
Yeah.
And you think, I can handle that, who cares? But we're social creatures, we're not designed to have that. We're designed to be very observant and very touchy-feely about how people feel about us. Because if you get it wrong, you could end up being killed.
Yeah.
Or you get expelled from the tribe.
Yeah.
So
you can sense that negativity.
Yes. So when people are being negative towards us, we pick up on it and we change our behaviour. So, and when you get a lot of it, psychologically it's damaging. It was damaging me. I'm looking online going, why does everybody hate me? I was amazing 6 months ago.
In your comments, actually. Yeah.
It was nothing like that. I'll show you the old messages when I was cancelled.
You're still getting them now, don't worry.
But so that will have an impact on his mental health, and that subconsciously, he will hear all that, and you won't like it.
Yeah. But if there's a march on 27th of October, I will try and go down, and I urge our listeners to go down. When we get there, let's just shout traitor. Let's just keep shouting traitor, traitor, because you are a traitor, Starmer. Yeah. You're a traitor to this country. You're a traitor to the people. Doing what you're doing to the pensioners, doing what you're doing to these prisoners you're sticking in jail, giving money to bloody Ukraine and Africa. It's outrageous. So yeah, people just need to be shouting traitor, traitor, and you can't get arrested for that, can you?
Oh yeah. And I'm sure you can. If you're part of a group shouting that, then I'm sure there's legislation under terrorism, under this, under that. You can be arrested for this country.
Well, they're going to have to arrest all of us.
That's safety comes in numbers. Why do you think they always treat the Free Palestine marches with soft gloves? It's because too many of them. Why did they come down hard on a couple of dozen white people writing at Southport and other places? Only a couple of dozen of them.
Yeah.
So when you're in numbers, the elite, the establishment, the police are like, no, we can't let this get out of hand.
Yeah.
Ignore that. They start throwing bottles at us, and then we'll come. But don't give them any excuse to riot because we don't want this. We'll be blamed for this. So there's safety in numbers.
Yeah. Just some more numbers here for you, and I'm not sure people know the extent of this, because we talk about England and Britain and are things as bad as they think they are. But I got some stats here, and I've never seen them anywhere else before. I sent them to you. And these are the top 10 dangerous areas in London in 2023. So these are 10 different, I don't know what they're called. Are they provinces in London? I don't know what they're called.
Council boroughs.
Yeah, boroughs. Yeah. 10 boroughs in London.
I think there's 32 all in all.
Right. Well, these are the top worst ones. Right. So the number 10, number 10 is Lewisham. In 2023, there were 180 stabbings, and 12 shootings. The list then goes down: Lambeth, Haringey, Hackney, I've spelled that one wrong, Croydon, Southwark, Newham, Tower Hamlets, and it ends in Westminster. And bizarrely in Westminster in 2023, there were 320 stabbings and 40 shootings.
That is the big surprise on that list.
Yeah, I know. I'm assuming Westminster strays into council estates or things like that. That's probably why, I'm guessing.
I wonder if Westminster includes the city of Westminster. Because the city of Westminster is a city within London. It's not, I'm not even sure if it's
Yeah.
They have their own police force.
Yeah.
It's not the Met. is you have the City of Westminster Police. That's a surprise, that one. That's a surprise.
But don't you think the number's staggering?
Yes.
Because we know there's stabbings, but do we know there's that many stabbings? Because if I add up those stabbings there, we're looking at something like 3,000 stabbings in those 10 boroughs.
Right.
In a year.
Yeah.
So this is, we hear about the occasional stabbing. There's thousands happening in London. Yeah. Do people actually know that?
I think if you live there, you do.
Yeah. I mean, that is just horrendous, those numbers.
In London, it's out of control. I mean, the violence, how unsafe you feel.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, my son lives in Stockwell, which isn't on this list, but I suspect there's a large number of stabbings happening there as well.
There is.
I mean, it's chaotic. I don't think people really understand the extent of how much it's out of control. Yeah. And all Sadiq Khan can do is freaking do monuments to decolonisation.
He can't do anything because what he would have to do would go against everything he believes in.
Yeah.
So he can't do anything. The only blessing on that list is most of that knife crime will be between scumbags and scumbags.
Yes. Yeah. I suspect a lot of it is gang related or
yeah. But some innocent people will be caught up in all that as well.
Yeah. I want to finish today because we're well into this episode. Just a little bit about Islam, and I'm not going to do history of Islam. We've done that. No. I'm going to do one of those maybe next time. I just want to talk about some stats I saw recently that shocked me, basically. And we're aware there's an ongoing battle between Islam and Christianity. It's been going on for 2 centuries now, nearly 1300 years, ongoing. But what I didn't realise, it was kind of so rife, and particularly in France. So this year, 40 churches, Christian churches, have been set on fire in France alone. One church that burnt to the ground was built in 1854, so it survived 2 world wars, but it had been set on fire. Now, nobody's saying it overtly, but it's highly suspected that most of those fires are set by Muslims, radical Muslims. There was a pictorial on Twitter that showed that church fires in France in the past 4 years, and there are literally hundreds.
Yep. Same thing is beginning to happen now in Canada.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
All right, I didn't know that. Just on the idea that Islam is a peaceful religion, there are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world. You may have heard this stat before. And it's estimated that 15 to 25% of those are radical Islamists dedicated to the destruction of the Western civilization. So that means there's 300 million Muslims who potentially are radical Islamists, basically. And what it also means is the fact there's a peaceful majority is academic and irrelevant.
Well, only if they're evenly spread.
Yes, only if they're evenly spread.
They won't be evenly spread.
Yeah. And I think we've seen various videos, and I saw a video on YouTube where a woman, an Islamic woman, was saying most Muslims are peaceful, which is technically true based on that. However, you can also argue that most Germans were peaceful before the Second World War. Most Russians were peaceful, but 20 million of them were murdered and killed. Most Chinese people are peaceful, but 70 million of them have been murdered and killed over time. And most Japanese were peaceful before the Second World War, but then 12 million people were killed by them. So this mostly peaceful crap about Islam is really a nonsense.
I don't think it's a nonsense. I think it means we've got a problem with radical Islam, and the moderate Muslims have got a problem with radical Islam, and it's a problem the West needs to solve. And I said last time, we only solve it when the moderate Muslims are empowered to be the major part of the answer to this. We can't solve it for them, and I still don't think this is a big problem in the West. I think it just takes politicians with a backbone to mobilise moderate Muslims to be able to deport Muslims immigrant Muslims who do not match our expectations of them, and also to clamp down on radical Muslims as well. But we don't do any of it. So it's just a free-for-all at the moment.
Yeah, I think you and I continue to disagree on this, and it's interesting when we did our history of Islam part one, a lot of your viewers agreed with me in that they said that you are confusing, as a lot of people do, the religion of Islam with the ideology and the living of Islam, basically, and that Christianity and Islam cannot be compared, because Christianity is a religion and remains in its lane as a religion, if you like, whereas Islam is a way of life and a theology base, an ideology.
Only today,
yes,
but 1,000 years ago, Christianity was like that.
Yeah,
so things can change.
True.
I
However, I think the difference is Christianity, and I'm not an expert, and maybe you're not an expert either, but I think Christianity has never said the word in the Bible is inviolate and nothing can be, and it has to be taken literally or whatever. Whereas I think Islam says this is inviolate, it can't be changed, this is the way you have to live your life.
1,000 years ago, Christianity was saying exactly the same thing about the Bible.
Okay.
Exactly the same thing. Yeah. Word of God.
Yeah.
That's why they persecuted Galileo.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it wasn't in the Bible.
Yeah, that's true.
Not in the Bible, it can't be true.
Yeah.
So we were just as backwards.
Yeah.
We're just 700 years older.
Yeah. But we haven't got 700 years, Nick.
I'm not fearful of radical Islam because radical Islam doesn't work anywhere in the world. Muslims don't run any decent countries anywhere in the world. They're a danger to us. Of course, they're a danger to us. But it's a problem that can be solved. What I don't want to hear off people is this is the problem that can't be solved. Because I'll tell you what the answer is then. We've got to kill them all. And I don't want to kill millions and millions of Muslims across Europe.
No, I don't think that the answer is to kill all Muslims. But I think it's got to be...
But that's where it goes. So if it is, we can't change Islam, what's the solution?
Well, no, I don't think you can't change Islam, but I think you can't underestimate Islam either. I think, there's a very, very powerful ideology there.
Yeah.
That wants to achieve certain things, that requires certain things like Sharia law in order to make that happen. And I think that is a hard thing to change. So I think part of the way you do it is you say... And it's not just Islam or Muslims, it's kind of any religion. Yes, you can come to this country, yes, you can live here, and you can practice your religion, but you practice your religion behind closed doors in the sanctity of your churches or your houses, and it will have no impact on our society, on our culture, on our laws, basically. So I think you put conditions, and you yourself have often said, part of the problem with immigration in this country is there's so much of it that these communities don't have time to integrate, and they become parochial communities that exist amongst themselves and perpetuate their cultures and ideologies and I think Islam is the most extreme version of that in terms of the nature of its ideology. So I think part of the way you resolve it is by saying you have to embrace British culture, British religion, British traditions, and your religious ideologies cannot seep into which is what's happening.
Yeah.
Because there are Sharia courts already in England and all.
All that never should have started in the first place.
Yes, I agree. No, I agree. So
if we're looking at new Muslims, well, I want to end all immigration. So let's end immigration.
Yes.
So there's no issue then with new Muslims coming.
Yes.
Then we need to deal with the Muslims in this country to a certain extent, such as anybody who wasn't born, any immigrant who wasn't born here. Forget Muslim. Any immigrant who wasn't born here. I think most of them should go home.
Right.
So maybe not all, maybe not 100%, but most of them should be going.
So you're laying out your framework now of how this is resolved.
Yeah.
So we may end up in the same place here. Yeah. I'm thinking because anyway, go on. So end all immigration.
End all immigration
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most foreign nationals or people who weren't born in this country need to go home.
Yeah.
And then we need to support the British Muslims in this country to take control of their religion and have it the religion they want it to be in this country. The fact we're having no more radicals coming over, no more imams coming over. We've got people who are born in this country who have to spend a lot of money and time integrating people who were born here into this culture. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to be hard work, but it's doable because it has to be doable, because the alternative is, what do you do then with all those millions of Muslims in this country who were born here? What do you do with them?
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. Well, I know what the answer is for a lot of people. We kill them.
Yeah. No, for me, it's not so much, when we're talking about this, it's not so much saying what the answer is. For me, it's pointing out to hopefully you and to our listeners that this is a big issue. Because I think there's a lot of people who say, oh, Islam's a peaceful religion, everything's fine, it doesn't matter, integration is fine.
If you're watching this program, I think you know Islam's not peaceful.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of, I'm learning more about it as I go along, and I'm kind of trying to articulate what I'm seeing and understanding as I go forward. And as I say, I'm learning more about Islam as I read more about it as well, and I'm starting to realise it is a problem. It is a problem in this country, Islam, as it is at the moment. And
radical Islam is a problem in this country.
Yeah,
it's a bit like socialism. It depends who you speak to, depends on their definition of socialism. Everybody thinks they have the correct understanding of socialism. That's why it won't die. But Hitler was a socialist. Mussolini was a socialist. Stalin was a socialist. Mao was a socialist. Jeremy Corbyn's a socialist. My friends are socialists. You'll know someone who's a socialist. Keir Starmer's a socialist. They're not all the same. They don't have the same ideas. Their versions of socialism are all completely different. But they call themselves socialist. That's the same in the Muslim religion.
I think that's true.
They all call themselves Muslims, but they're all on different paths, doing different things, believing in different versions of it, and that's absolutely acceptable. I want to support the moderate Muslims to go down the path they want to go down. At the moment, in many countries, those moderate Muslims are being slaughtered by the radicals because they're saying you're not practicing the right type of Islam. Only we know the right type of Islam. So Islam is a problem. Radical Islam is a problem. I don't think it's an existential threat to this country or to Europe, because radical Islam, by definition, is a failing culture. And it's failed all over the world. They may cause us problems, they may kill us, but their days of conquering ended a long time ago. They're a failing culture. They're a backwards culture, a lot of that radical Islam. So they're not the existential threat that many people think they are.
Yeah, as we've said before, and quite interestingly, we talked about the Iranian Revolution in 1979, but as you and I have said, before that happened, all the Muslims used to wear suits, nice skirts. The women didn't wear hijabs. So, before that happened...
But what happened there was the Cold War.
Yes.
The Russians and Americans started using proxies to fight their battles.
Yes.
So the Americans funded the Taliban to fight the Russians.
Right, yeah.
And then the Americans went in, well, we'd already funded the Taliban. Other countries, the Russians would fund that country to fight because they were against the West. And all of us were funding the radical Islamists because we were using them against our enemy.
Yeah.
The reason why we've got so many radical Islamists in this country, especially from the 70s onwards, is we were using them to fight wars in places like Libya and those places. So they came here and we used them to fight the Russians. And while they were here, they were planning to fight here as well.
Yeah.
And it was that two sides of the sword. We only saw one side. We were using them, but they were using us. But before the 60s and 70s, radical Islam wasn't that much of a problem.
Exist, no. But also don't forget that a lot of it was funded by the Gulf states once the oil came out there, basically.
And why are they funding it? Because they're funding it to fight their enemies. So they're funding it to fight Iran.
Yeah.
So these are all proxy wars, and they're all using the radical Islamists until it gets too much.
Well, I've heard recently that Saudi Arabia stopped doing this. They stopped quite a while ago. And why did they stop?
Well, there's a good video of the Prince of Saudi Arabia at a news conference speaking in English, saying radical Islam is a problem, and what I foresee is radical Islam is going to be a problem for my country, and those people will all be coming out of the West because you're not dealing with radical Islam.
Oh, really?
That's what he said.
That's interesting.
So he's saying
West... So he's saying it's a threat to Saudi now.
He's saying the West are breeding radical Islam because you're not clamping down on it. In those countries like Saudi Arabia, they're killing them all, and have been. If you're found to be radical Islamist against the monarchy, you die. Where in
Because
Europe,
of course the monarchy, the monarchy and the tribal structure,
Yeah.
doesn't suit.
No, it
Islam. Does it?
Doesn't.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
so radical Islam can, it's not easy is the wrong word. Radical Islam can be dealt with. We just need to know how to do it and deal with it.
Yes.
And yeah.
I think what I'm saying is it's a problem. I would be interested in knowing what the solution is in this country.
Yeah.
To it. And I know Calvin Robinson's solution is ship all Pakistanis back to Pakistan regardless. There may be something in between that and where we are now, I guess. We're going to end on some positive news around Islam, which is a further, and I don't know what period this is, but apparently a further 1 million Iranians have converted to Christianity in Iran. And the Muslim percentage in Iran is, guess how much it is now?
39%.
30%.
Oh.
So that is quite shocking as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we assume Iran is a radical Muslim hotbed full of Muslims running around with scimitars, chopping Christians' heads off.
So Iran is is the strangest country in the Middle East, and it's because they have a radical Islamist government that hates the West,
Yeah.
with a population that isn't radical and loves the West. Every other country around there is the opposite. They have a pro-Western government,
Yeah.
but the population hate the West.
Ah, that's interesting.
Iran is the only one that's different there.
I wonder why.
Persians were never a backward people. Persians had a huge empire before the Greeks.
Yeah. And also the Persians were not Muslims for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were conquered. Yeah,
there was Zoroastrians. I don't know what religion that
it's
is.
that.
Yeah.
Had their own language.
Yeah.
Farsi. So don't speak Arabic. They were very proud with a very long, fantastic history. They're not a tribal people. They were an empire people. And they were pro-Western. But then socialists came along and ruined it all for them, didn't they?
So with that tour of the Middle East, thank you very much, Nick Buckley, and that's the end of the Mayor and I for this week. Very nice to see you.
Thank you. Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.